Hello everyone, today I'd like to show you how to run your Spring Boot application with Kafka. Kafka is a streaming platform for asynchronous communication between your systems. And firstly, to run this tutorial on your computer, you should install Kafka on your local computer. It's easy to do because Kafka has a good quick start page. You just need to navigate to official web page and just download Kafka. Download the latest Kafka release and then extract it to the convenient folder for you on your computer. I just did it. So I navigated to my Kafka folder and now I'm gonna start the Kafka environment. Firstly, make sure you have Java 8 installed and then just copy paste these start configuration comments to run your Kafka environment. Firstly, we're gonna start Zookeeper. Let's navigate to my folder and then open terminal. I open the terminal and then just paste and click enter. So my Zookeeper started. I open the new tab and start Kafka broker service. Copy paste and enter. And now you can see that my Kafka server started successfully. By default, Kafka server listens to the port 1992 and I'm not gonna change it. Now it's time to get my Spring Boot projects. Firstly, I navigate to start.spring.io and generate empty project with required dependency for the Kafka. Firstly, I just change group ID and get a name. And let's call it Kafka Tutorial Producer. And let's add dependency. Firstly, we need dependency for the Kafka. And we need dependency Spring for Apache Kafka. I need to mention that Spring gives you a really good out-of-box solution for your Kafka, and you just need to connect Spring dependency and just you can run your Spring Boot Kafka application in a couple of clicks. Let's add dependency for web because it's gonna be a web application, and actually that's it. Let's generate the project. And let's generate another project, Kafka Tutorial Consumer. Because to see Kafka in action, it's better to use a couple of services which are gonna communicate with each other. I'm gonna leave dependencies the same as for the producer and click generate. Now let's extract my applications and now let's just add configuration properties for our application server, because if you're gonna run two applications, Spring Boot gives you default port as 8080, so we need to change port for one application to avoid configuration mistakes. Let's say we want to run our consumer on server port 8081 and that's it. And we're gonna leave our producer run on 8080. Now let's navigate to our producer and write some producer code. I'm going to create simple service. And I'm going to mark it as service to be able to use Spring dependency injection features. And now I just create a method. I'm going to call it produce. And let's say my method will produce just a simple message. To be able to put my message to the Kafka topic, I need to auto-wire Kafka template. And Kafka accepts data in the key value, and the key of my message will be string, and the value is string also. Let's just close it a moment, and then I just call Kafka template send. And as you can see, we need to specify a topic. What is topic for Kafka? In a simple word, you can think about topic as a folder on your local computer. When you put something in a folder, you know where to find it. For example, you create folder my vacation photos, yes, and you put your vacation photos in this folder, and then you can find data according your folder name. So you can think of topics as your folder. It's like it's like folder on your local computer. And let's call topic and messages. And then when we will listen, then we will consume the messages. We will listen messages topic. You can have multiple topics across your application. It doesn't matter how many topics you have. You can handle a lot of it, but make sure you write and consume in the same topic. And that's it. We produced a message, and let's just system out something instead of logs. Okay, looks good. Now let's write some controller to be able to trigger our produce message. Let's create firstly a package controller, and then let's create, for example, home controller. Let's auto-wire our producer service, and then let's just make it get method. And let's put our message in the request param. And just call producer service produce message. That's it. Looks good. Why do we have an error? Yeah, missing return statement. Just return OK. Let's start our producer. And while our producer is gonna start, we just navigate to the consumer. And let's add a consumer to our application. let's create a package consumer and create consumer service. As usual, I'm gonna mark it as service, but actually in this scope of topic it doesn't require, because we will now use the consumer service anywhere. So let's just create a method, consumer method, and that's it. So how can I connect this method? How can I enable this method to listen the Kafka streams? It's easy, just enable annotation Kafka listener and specify a topic you're going to listen. And that's it. Let's start our consumer and let's just try to open all. Something happened. No group ID found. Yeah, because I forgot to add group ID. You can think about group ID as a group of topics, group of consumers which listen to the topic. If you doesn't specify a group ID, it creates group ID itself. But for Spring Boot, you need to specify group ID. Let's start it once again, and let's try to open two applications in one screen to be able to see. Let's close this demo application to be able to see all the stuff. Yeah, looks good. I think so. Let's open our Postman and call our generate. Let me close this one and close this one. Yeah. Let's try to call our generate with our message. Let's open our Postman and make HTTP localhost 8080 generate message hello. Generate. Why do I print generate instead of generate? Generate. And I have okay. So it looks like it doesn't. Yeah. So I just generated a message. You can see this log, big log, producer config values. It just runs the first time you produce the message. After it will disappear. And you can see we have our producer message hello. And let's check our application. Another our application received our hello message. Let's, for example, add another message. Hello there. And we can see, let me just reopen. We can see that we consume hello there message. And what about all these settings? Why I haven't added any settings to the application properties file, as you have seen in a lot of tutorials before? That's because Spring Boot gives you default Kafka settings out of the box, but I'm just gonna show you how you can specify your own settings through the application properties file. Navigate to application properties file. You can see a lot of properties for Kafka if you print Spring Kafka. And if we set settings for producer, we need to set producer. And for example, if you want to change your Bootstrap server for Kafka, you just select Bootstrap servers and then specify something else. Let's specify our current server. Localhost 9092. By default, it also specifies 1992 default Kafka port. If you navigate to Kafka properties file, you can see bunch of properties for Kafka. And if you actually need to configure some of them, you can just navigate through this file and see what you can configure. The same thing is for the consumer. And let's say we want to pass, instead of string, just string, we're going to pass some complex object like message object. And let's try to do this. First, let's navigate to the producer and create new package. And let's call it model. And create message model object. It's just simple object with, let's say, we want to pass some message in the string. And to show you various of object, let's just pass some integer field like for example age. Yes, and let's create constructor. And we need default constructor. And let's create getters and setters. It's a simple object. And let's do the same for our consumer. Remember, consumer and producer is different services which we're gonna make to communicate with each other. So it's not easy to, actually it's not so easy to pass a JSON object or pass complex object through the Kafka. But with Spring Boot you can easily set up your serializers and deserializers to enable such communication. Let's navigate to the consumer and change our methods. Let's add another request param, integer age, and let's pass, for example, new message and age. Message and age, yeah. And let's navigate to the producer and accept message. And let's generate, for example, toString method to be able to see logs. And let's say we want to pass message. Yeah, and in this, in the value, we just need to pass message. And that's it with our Java code. And let's navigate to the application properties and set Kafka Serializer and Kafka value serializer. Just print Kafka producer Serializer and just select org Apache Kafka common serialization string serialization. Because the key of our producer is string and the value is an object which we're gonna pass in JSON format. So just navigate back to the application properties and specify producer value serializer. Kafka producer value serializer and specify JSON serializer org Spring Framework Kafka support serializer JSON serializer. And to be able to allow Spring serialization, just specify Spring JSON trusted packages. Spring Kafka consumer properties Spring JSON trusted just equals all, and let's just paste it to our consumer, and let's specify a consumer key deserializer and value deserializer. And let's specify Spring Kafka value serializer, deserializer. String deserializer, and it looks I just misconfigured everything. Just change it with places because we have key as string and value as JSON, not the opposite. Case deserializer is string and value deserializer is JSON. Looks good. Let's just change our consumer to consume our message. And let's not forget to add toString to our message. Let's just alt insert and generate toString method. Let's restart our applications. Let's restart our consumer. It started successfully, and let's restart our producer. Okay, let's try to pass complex object. And we have awk message. Let's navigate to our producer and see we produced message, and back to our consumer, and we consumed successfully consumed the message which we passed. Let's try one more. And as you can see, we successfully consumed the message. And that's it for today, guys. Kafka is a really complex and really big tool for this little tutorial, for this small tutorial. I just show you the basics, how to start your Kafka studying, to get familiar with the Kafka and how to run it in your Spring Boot application. You may find a lot of other helpful things in Apache Kafka docs. And that's it for today for this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. Goodbye.